Hi, today we're gonna do this cute little salty seagull. It's just got 3 colors. You can actually probably do it with 2, but I'm lazy and I didn't want to mix colors. So we'll walk you through this process from start to finish. Feel free to change the colors. You don't have to have a yellow sweater on your seagull. You don't have to have a blue beret on your seagull. You can do whatever you want with your seagull. It's kind of how I'm gonna do it with this. So the first thing that we're gonna need to do is we'll go over the materials. I'm gonna use a spray bottle to wet my paints. So in this painting, I used yellow ochre. So I'm just giving it a spritz, Paynes Gray, and Ultramarine Blue. Now you'll notice I don't have a palette to mix colors in because I'm gonna do most of it just kind of on the paper. I'm gonna rinse my brush. I'm gonna do all of that kind of stuff to make it be on the paper. So hopefully that works for everybody. So you'll need a paper towel for dabbing. You want a big round brush and a little brown brush, but not a super big brown brush and not a super little brown brush. These are student grade that I use for my watercolor workshops. They're not the best brushes, but they're not the worst brushes either. So don't think you can't do this because you don't have the right materials. This is, for some reason it's backwards on Amazon. It's 4x6 cotton rag mixed media paper, which I am hugely fond of. And I definitely use this a lot for these little things. And then I take these, the finished ones, and I have these 5x7s, and these fit perfectly on there. I just glue them in place when I send them out. But this is a 4x6, so you could easily frame it as well. You're also gonna want a black Micron pen. I have an 01. You can use, probably want to keep it a small, like an 05 or an 02, but this should work pretty good. And then you have your image. If you've gone to my website, drunkenauntwendy.com, and clicked on outlines, you can get this outline for $1. You can size it up or down. I have it sized for a 4x6 because that's what I'm gonna do to make this just a quick little painting. But we have to get this onto this. Now you can sketch it too. You don't have to do this. But I'm gonna I've got some graphite transfer paper here. A lot of times I just use a light box, but I don't have one today. So I wanna kinda eyeball where I want that. Put the transfer paper over, make sure I can still see the edges of my paper so I know where I'm placing it so that I can make sure it's more centered. There we go. And then you get your pencil. If you haven't used graphite transfer paper before, just get your pencil. And then you're just gonna outline your little guy here. And the outline is really, it's just a guideline. It is not, you don't have to do this perfect. You don't have to stay in the lines. It's just there to give you an idea so that when you're painting, you know what's going on, okay? Now this little like circle inside the eye, it's really so I remember to leave a white spot. If you forget to leave a white spot, no big deal. That's what pens and bleed proof white are for. It's not a big problem. Now you want to press hard enough that this is transferring, but you also don't want to press so hard that you leave really dark lines. And I haven't done the spots with the dotted lines yet because I wanted to talk while I did that and I didn't want to forget. So the dotted lines are for this little spot here. So I don't want a harsh line. I just want to remember that I'm going to put shading in those spots. So I want to really, really lightly put that in because I don't want this really harsh lines. That's why it's like broken. It's just there as kind of a guideline. If you don't want to put it down, don't. No worries here. Okay, so then you take off your transfer paper, you set your outline to the side, and you have your little guy. So he's higher up on this one, so he's up higher instead of down lower. It's all good. It just is your preference on how you want to do it. Since we're doing like a scrumbly bottom of the sweater, totally cool. So we're gonna do this one in the same colors that I did this one, but that doesn't mean you have to. He would look fantastic in any type of color. I use primary colors because that's what I was feeling the day when I was painting it. So we want to make sure that these paints are wet. Sometimes I add a little bit more. Sometimes I do it with my brush and I don't worry about my spray bottle, but the spray bottle is helpful. So I have my water here. I know it's on the wrong side. I'm gonna move it over here. I don't have a clue if that's in frame. So when you're doing any paintings, especially with watercolors, you kind of want to start with your lighter colors first, and then you can darken as you go. But in this situation, I'm going to start with the yellow, then I'm going to move to the blue, then I'm going to move to the Paynes Gray, just kind of give everything a chance to dry as I process. So get your brush wet in some water. Make sure it's clean. Sometimes I don't always remember to clean my brushes. Also, the bottom of this jar is not clean, so that's fine. All right, so I'm just getting this wet just a little bit, and then I'm dipping it. I'm gonna scoot over a little bit so that you guys have the paint. And then all these lines are done with the pen, so don't stress out about that. So I'm gonna get some of my yellow ochre. And I'm just gonna start putting it directly onto the paper. And I think I have it a little too thick, so I'm dipping it in the brush, or dipping the brush in the water, tapping it on the side, that'll dilute it a little, tapping it on my paper towel as well, and that will help reduce some of the pigment in this. And you can paint right over that circle because it doesn't matter, because we're going to fill that in with black pen. And then we go under here. And there you go. Now your beak's done. So the next part is the sweater. So for the sweater, I like to do, when I'm doing round things, it's kind of darker on the sides and then it gets lighter in the center to give it an incidence of roundness. So I'm going to put this on, and I'm not going to be super precious about it because the Paynes Gray that I come in with later is going to add those shadows. And I'm also switching brushes because this is taking too long and I'm impatient. If you are impatient like me, switch brushes. If you're not, don't worry about it. So then I'm gonna just put this down. I'm gonna redarken this side over here a little bit. And then I'm gonna do this side over here so that I have dark on both sides. And then as you can see, it's skipping a little, which means it needs more water. So I'm dipping it into the water and just bringing it over, kind of using this as a palette to get more paint. And there we go. That part of the sweater is done. So for the next part, for the stripes on the sweater, I just dipped my brush into the yellow paint. I picked a spot that I thought would look good for the first stripe. And I laid it down, and then I pulled it across at kind of doing a rounded shape. And I'm going to get a little bit more water to help spread out that color. But it doesn't have to be perfect. Just kind of do what feels good for you with the stripes that you're doing for your particular bird. Then I'm coming down here, and sometimes I turn it sideways because it's easier for me. And I just pull it across. Definitely need more water. So if you don't like this rag paper and you want to do this in postcard paper or just regular watercolor paper, that's all good. This stuff does take a little bit of time to get used to. Then I'm going to put that brush in water, and I'm going to take my little brush and I'm going to make tiny little lines, kind of following the angle. Getting more water. In between, so he's got thick stripes and skinny stripes. And all of this that's happening here is just me dry brushing and kind of pulling down and just. You can feel free to make that sound effect if you like. You don't have to do this all in yellow. You can do it in the other color when we put the shadow on. We're just pulling it down. That's all. There we go. All done with that. So the next thing we're going to do is work on the blue. So let's work on the blue shadow of the neck, because even though this bird is a white bird, white has a lot of colors in it, so sometimes we like to add blue to kind of make the white pop a little better. So I have the Paynes Gray. Now, this is not Paynes Gray, this is the Ultramarine Blue. It's going to be really, really dark. So you want to get it on your brush, then you want to dip it in water and kind of swirl it around and tap it on the side of your cup, and then touch your paper towel, and then do it again. Touch your paper towel till you get a light, almost pale blue color. You don't want it super dark. You're gonna always add more, but it's really hard to take it away. So we're just gonna start over here on this cheek, and we're just gonna kind of pull this over. And again, the line is not important. We're just getting some color down. Be really careful on this edge right here. I like to leave a little bit of white in between, and then I can fix that later. And then I want a little bit of shadow over here near the eye. And I have a little bit of shadow in front of the eye too. And I'm gonna put some shadow up here on the top of his head because that's what I'm feeling. You'll notice that even though I've painted this before, it's gonna be completely different this time. So now I'm rinsing my brush, and I'm gonna go in and just kind of soften these edges. So I'm just scumbling, kind of rubbing the brush around so it doesn't look like I put in these harsh lines. And just keep that in mind when we do the other shadow work as well. Now, I want this to be a little darker right here on, we'll call it the cheek. It's a bird. I'm not exactly sure what its anatomy is. Then I'm going to get some more of the ultramarine and I'm going to put it in, and it looks really dark, but that's okay because it's also really wet. So it will spread out. I just rinsed my brush, and then I'm going to take this and just pull it this way. And watercolor also dries lighter than you're seeing it right now. So we're going to put this on, drop in just a little bit more and see how that spreads out. And we're just going to leave this part alone for a little bit. I think so on my reference photo, there's less of a line right here. So I'm going to come in here and just kind of blend that out a little bit. Okay, now we're going to do the hat. It looks like it flipped over. You want this side dark and this side light, and then the top of the hat dark. So let's just get some color. I'm using the larger brush, which again, you can use either of the brushes that you like. And I'm just kind of filling that in. I'm going to turn it over because it's a little easier for me to work with that way. I'm going to get that one out of the way. And I'm going to do a nice big swoop of this dark color right here. And pull it over. I'm going to get a little bit more and do a swoop along the edge of our hat. Now you see where it starts skipping a little? That means I need more water. It means I've got not enough water to paint ratio, and the paint is doing, it's kind of called a dry brush effect. So we're just getting this all colored in. I'm going to rinse the brush, and I'm just going to move around what's on the paper a little bit. Okay, and then we want to just do the top of the hat. So there's already some blue in my brush, so let's just do it. If it bleeds here, cool. It'll look neat. It'll make it different than everybody else's. So it's a totally fine if yours bleeds a little. And again, this is just our first pass. So if we have to do some detail work, we can come back in and clean up this line right here. So I'm gonna flip it back over. Da, 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 da. I know, animals always look weird until you put in the eyes, and we'll be doing that in a minute. I'm gonna clean my brush. I'm gonna check to see if we're dry down here. So we're not dry over on this side, but that's gonna be okay. We are dry over on this side. So I'm using my big brush, and I'm using my Paynes Gray, which is my favorite. You probably could mix the yellow ochre and the ultramarine and get kind of a Paynes Gray color because it is it's a very blue dark. So you're gonna get a bunch of paint on the brush, then you're gonna dip your brush in your water, tap it on the side, tap it on your paper towel. And when it's spreading like that, it looks dark to start, but then it fades out. That's kind of what we want because we're just using Paynes Gray for a shadow. And so we're just gonna go in, and we're gonna go in kind of dark right in here, right underneath that collar. Get it on, and then we're just gonna start pulling it down. If you decide it looks too dark, you can always use a paper towel, but I'm just gonna get the brush wet again and come in and tone it down a little bit. And I'm gonna do the swoops. And I'm adding water to the brush. I'm not adding anything else. And it's making some of the yellow run, and that's fine. That adds a fun little dimension to it. So we're just gonna add in kind of the Paynes Gray lightly. You can always add more, but in watercolor it's hard to take away. And I want to make sure we have shadows underneath the collar of this all the way across. But I already put water here, so that's gonna run down, which is great. So let's give him a little shoulder action here. And again, it's like the light's right here in the front, which is why he is rounded on the sides. So then just with plain water, we're just pulling this down. Get some more water. You'll leave some of the white, but feel free to have this do whatever it is you want it to do. Like, go nuts with it. If you get a little bit more of the Paynes Gray and water, check that color. Non-existent. There we go. You kind of drop it in. Okay, I guess I'm not getting enough of the color. Sometimes that happens. But if you drop it in, it'll just bleed down. Ooh, we went a little dark there. That's okay. I'm going to show you how to fix that in just a second. I just want to add some dark into here. And then, when I've put it on and it's a little darker than I want, I take a clean paper towel and I just come in and I go dabby, dabby, dabby. So we've tapped it with a paper towel, which actually helps dry the whole thing out and makes it possible for us to do some of the other things that we want to do. You're going to get your teeny tiny brush. Well, this is not a teeny tiny brush. It's like a 3, but it's what I use a lot in my classes. And I'm going to use the Paynes Gray, and I'm going to give my little bird its eyeball, because I need this part to dry before I do the pen work. And I want to put in a band underneath its hat. So I'm basically just coming in with a round shape and leaving just a little bit of that white spot. And there you go. Now you have the eye. I know it looks really weird, but that's okay. And this looks like it's dry enough. And if it bleeds, it bleeds. It's totally fine. We're going to add this little band underneath the hat. So I'm pushing down to get it a little thicker and pulling up to get a thin line. Okay, now the next thing you want to do is you want to add these shadows around the collar. It's real easy. We're going to use the Paynes Gray again. If you can't tell, Paynes Gray is my favorite color. And we're just going to lightly outline them. That is way too dark. We're going to rinse our brush, dab it on a paper towel, and get the paper towel and clean this up completely. Take that off. And let's try this again with less. And this is why people usually mix in a palette instead of just right on the paper. But it's okay. So we're just kind of outlining this. We're going down in between them. You don't have to do the tops, but I would do the bottoms for sure, just because that adds it into the shadow. You can see that just adds just a little bit. And it's okay if they get darker over here, kind of going through the top and over the bottom here. I'm getting a little bit more so I can do the other side. Is that enough paint? This is the fun thing about watercolor, is your paint to water ratio. Sometimes it's easier just to put it down and then do your blending. I'm aware a lot of watercolorists don't do it this way. I do, because it's what makes me happy. If it doesn't make you happy, you don't have to do it this way. So then we pull that down. And we have our little shades around the collar. So the last thing you need to do is the detail work, which is what this Micron pen is for, because it is so much easier. And I'm really bad with a brush when it comes to detailed tiny little lines. So I'm gonna do this little spot in the beak that's kind of, I call it an air hole. I don't know if that's what it is. Then I'm gonna lightly take this and do his mouth. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're gonna go up in here just a little bit and down here a little bit. And then the next thing you wanna do is just kind of define this eye. I like to give them more of an almond shape when I do their eyes. So I like to give it like the little eyeball funk. And then you want to do any details. So I've decided this line is a little too harsh right here. So I'm just going to get a wet brush and I'm going to soften that if I can, just by going over it and pulling it down a little bit. And that softens that up. And I want a little bit more shadow up in here. So I'm just using the paint that was already on the table, and I want to give him on the paintbrush, and I want to give him a little bit more shadow here. And then we've lost some of the line here, so we just go in and we get some of the ultramarine blue and we put that line back in and just paint it up. And there you go. You have your own little salty seagull. So then you want to sign it. Well, I put the name on it. You don't have to. And sign it. And again, I sign with a pen because that works better for me. You are free to do it however you want. And feel free to go in with the pen, but try not to go too crazy with your pen details, because sometimes you overwork it. Like now, looking at my reference, decided I made this not round enough, and then I lost a little bit of where I wanted the highlight to be. So I'm gonna take this, I'm gonna take the black pen and just completely cover that up. It's all gone. And a gel pen, which I always have around just for in case purposes. I'm gonna just do, I'm gonna draw it on my finger first because sometimes you have to get these activated. There we go. And we're just gonna do a little dot, or it's not gonna wanna work on this paint today. Okay. See, sometimes you just have to watch these to find out what we do wrong all the time. So this is bleed proof white. Again, it's just something you should always have around, especially if your highlight is not where you want it. It's your little brush, and straight up and down, find the location that you want it, and do a dot. And then do another dot because it's not dark enough. There you go. And then you're all done. I hope to see you guys next time. I hope you enjoyed painting with me.